Circle of Hope Network, doing life and being church together.
I like to think that was 10 years ago, but apparently it was more than that. It cost me a lot to become a Seventh-day Adventist. I had to give up my family. I had to give up my inheritance. If you're from the West, you probably know Scamper Trailers, and that was my family's business. And I can say that I wouldn't trade what I lost for what I gained when I became a Seventh-day Adventist. Approximately 25,000 people today around the world took their stand and were baptized. That's over 1 million a year. Approximately 200 new churches or companies are meeting for the very first time today on the average Sabbath. In 1863, when we were incorporated, there was one Seventh-day Adventist for every 750,000 people in the world. How overwhelming. But today, on the average, 1 in 200 people around the world came to a Seventh-day Adventist church. 1 in 200 from 1 in 750,000. I'm going to talk about branding. I'm going to show a video. This was done by the...
No, I never heard about it.
Sorry. This was done by the South Pacific Division about 5 years ago, and it grew the concept in North America. We have adapted this, and we have some changes. But I just want to talk about branding for a minute. Actually, for close to an hour. Enjoy this video. They all talk like they're from Australia. I wish I could talk like that. I also wish I could talk like I was from rural Scotland. You know, they just sound magnificent.
Sorry.
It's funny, isn't it? Adventists have been in Australia for over 130 years. We have a huge impact on this society through our health and our education work. But after all of that, it's not that society hates us. It's much worse than that. They don't even know we exist. In stark contrast to well-known brands like the Salvation Army or KFC, we've failed to penetrate the public consciousness. But did you know that there are over 6 times as many Seventh-day Adventists in Australia as there are members of the Salvation Army? And Adventists actually have more physical locations in Australia than KFC. So why aren't we a household name like the Salvation Army, KFC, or other major brands? It's simple. The way we present ourselves to the public is confusing. Our branding is inconsistent, incognito, and it's not integrated. The Salvation Army, for example, uses the same bright, easily recognizable logo on everything they do. Us? Take a look at how inconsistent we are. Here are a few of our school signs and logos. Can you see that every logo is different, and some of the schools don't even use the Adventist name? Our healthcare entities also use a variety of different logos, none of which is the Adventist logo. And ADRAP? Well, you guessed it. They have their own logo too. And people have to sort of decode their name to know that there's an Adventist in there. Even local churches don't have a consistent look to their signage. And that's just the beginning. It seems like we're close to having more logos than we have members. Imagine if every McDonald's had a unique name and logo for each of its individual restaurants. Wouldn't work, would it? And yet that's exactly what we're doing. It's not only that our branding is inconsistent, our signs also have a tendency to be incognito. What do I mean by that? Well, they tend to be low to the ground, so they're very hard for passing traffic to see. Often they're parallel to the road, which makes them impossible to view unless you're driving by like this, with your head turned. Well, I don't advise that. Not a good plan. And there's a reason people go to war in these colors. They're so dull, they're almost impossible to see. This all leaves us with a symphony of branding, incognito incoherence. That's why we can do so much, and yet be known so little. And that's all too bad. You know, Ellen White says our churches should be memorials to be seen by our communities. She also says the way we present ourselves has an important impact on the effectiveness of our evangelism. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? But when our signs look like this, well, what does that say about us? We look out of date, out of touch, a whole group of people who just don't care. But we as a church family, working together under the grace of God, we can turn this around. We've been working with top designers and signage experts, and together we've developed new signs that are designed to be consistent, to be visible, and to be legible. The signs are easy to see from passing cars, they're strong, and they're clear. They're vertical rather than horizontal because that makes them easy to see from a car. They have a bright color palette because that makes them stand out. They're perpendicular rather than parallel, so you don't have to twist your neck to see them. And they use few, easy to read words, so they're legible as people drive by at 40 to 60 Ks. But the signage isn't just for churches. The plan is for all of our entities to adopt a visual identity that clearly connects us together as an Adventist church family. As we move forward together, we will present ourselves for who we are, one church with one identity, united in giving our country the good news that, you know what? Jesus is coming again soon. Of course, good signage isn't free. That's why your division, your union, and in some cases, your conference, have committed to join together to help cover the cost of new church signs. We have a lot of churches, so it's going to take a few years for every sign to be updated. So we're going to start with the churches on the busiest roads. Why? Well, they're the ones that are seen the most. If you would like your church to be a part of the first wave of new church signage across this country, just let your conference know. Our pioneers gave us a great inheritance of institutions and innovations, but they left building up the Adventist identity to you and to me. This is our chance. This could be our contribution. Let's join together as a Seventh-day Adventist church family committed to make this happen. We can do this. Divided, well, we're weak, but united, we'll be strong.
So that's what the church down in Australia is doing. And it was a hard transition. We've adopted it in North America. We have chosen one color. It's a denim blue. And reason why that is, and there was some feedback on this, if you go to our conference or to the union office in Ontario, Oshawa, you have the conference office, they would have one color. We're next, we would have a separate color. The church beside us would have a different color. The Pioneer Home would have a different color. The Adventist Community Service would have a different color, almost like the color of the rainbow. And right now, that's not what we're aiming for. I can't imagine anybody who works for Shell who said, you know, I don't think that yellow and red works in our area. No, they have to have the Shell yellow and red. They are one brand, one color around the world. When I go to Africa and see Shell, it's the same color. When I go to Fiji and see a Shell, it's the same. Canada, US, it's all the same color. So we've decided to go with one color. Now, this information has been sent to the pastors and to the churches. In Australia, they have Sanitarium Foods, which does a lot of their funding. We don't have anything like this. So there aren't subsidies from the union. If we would have subsidies, we would have to have an offering to create subsidies because we don't generate money. So I'm just going to go now to a PowerPoint to talk about the Seventh-day Adventist logo. Everybody recognizes our logo, I think, here. And you know, if you follow Facebook, there are people, and they're generally offshoots, who will say that there's an upside-down cross, this was done by Jesuits, and they go on and on. But what they don't know, and perhaps you don't know this either, the Seventh-day Adventist logo was designed by a guy from Saskatoon. He was born in Saskatoon. He's a third-generation Seventh-day Adventist. His name is Brian Gray. He's the editor, he's the layout person for the Adventist Review, and he designed the first Seventh-day Adventist logo. We didn't have a standard logo before this. We had things which are similar with three angels flying, sometimes different directions, sometimes going up, sometimes going down, but we had nothing standard around the world. In the late 1990s, we standardized we voted for our first standardized logo. And about a year ago, there was just a small update, which we'll show later. And that was also done by Brian Gray, who went to Kingsbury College and who, as I said, was born here in Saskatchewan too. His father was David Gay, if you remember David. And that's not supposed to go like that. Okay, let's try a different method. Okay, if you want to download the logo, and I had pads handed out if you want to make notes. Can you make sure everybody has a pad? The guy who was, sorry, I don't know what your name was. Do you have, yeah. Okay, yeah, let's go back to this. Okay, branding. Most people in the prairie provinces understand what a brand is, right? We used to brand our cows. Anybody ever done that? We brand our cows. We branded the animals, the machinery, the building. It is a function of setting something apart from something else. It focuses on differences as to determine ownership. Right? Everybody had their own brand for the cow. It had a unique name. Part of the brand of God is the Sabbath day. Then God blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. You are to be holy, which means set aside to me, because I the Lord, am holy, and I have set you apart to be my own. In the 20th century, the branding concept and marketing concept really caught on. Branding as marketing, it first really began from a managerial science in the 1920s with Procter & Gamble and for General Motors. Branding was a tool of the communication department to sell more products. The focus was sales. One of our brands at the Union is the Messenger. And the Messenger tells the story of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada. You know when you see the Messenger that it's something from the church that you can trust. We have it in French, and we didn't have to, and we use the French name for the Messenger because that was our brand. When we have the special South Asian edition, it's called the Messenger because that's a brand that Adventists can trust. Now, broadcasting, branding is done at full volume, especially in the US, not so much in Canada. There are signs everywhere. There are billboards along the highways for miles at a time, and in Canada, we don't have billboards beside highways because it's viewed as being distracting. So the ones that are beside the highways are generally on Indigenous land, which the government of Canada doesn't have any control over. Branding as a strategy got more and more focused in the 21st century. The expression of the essential truth of an organization, product, or service is their identity. It is a promise they make to the world, sharing of values. Asset owned by administration to define strategy. It is executed often by the communication department in our church. The byproduct is unity. Unity doesn't come before branding. It's essential in reaching people who live in the cities. The main focus is a consistent, holistic experience. Jesus said, "By this that you will know you are my disciples if you love one another." That's a brand of Christians, to be able to love one another. McDonald's has 38,000 stores. You can know McDonald's no matter where you go in the world. I've gone to places I never expected to see a McDonald's in the Middle East, in various places in Africa. But it's the same M everywhere around the world. Can you imagine if every McDonald's franchise says, "Well, I don't think that M works in our area"? or the Adventist Church says, well, I don't think that logo works in our area. No, it is a brand to be a brand. McDonald's is 120 countries. They say McDonald's in English, and they may have something in the other language beside that. Subway actually has more restaurants in Canada than what McDonald's has. They have 3 logos. They have changed, and that's often recommended not, but you can see what the transitions were. Pepsi-Cola is one of the worst ones for branding. Look how often they've changed their logo, and none of them were good. And Coca-Cola, Starbucks has some, but they transitioned. The Adventist Church, as I said before, we have only had one official logo. We didn't have the multitude of logos that were ambiguous and different in every country. And have to say that part of the reason for the change of the logo is we needed to have a font that was in every language of the world. And it would have cost us something like $2 million to create enough fonts for all the languages of what we are in. But this is highly recognized no matter where you go in the world. This is the East Jamaican Conference. This is, now here's some people who butchered our logo. And that we're asking people not to modify our logo to believe what you feel is local culture. It doesn't work. And we provide it free anyway. There are logos modified like this. We're saying don't do that. No person who works for Shell or Esso or Walmart or any of the other places, they have to maintain who they are and what they're licensed for. And when it's different, it's weak. My personal opinion, and I have to say this is personal because that means that pretty much nobody agrees with me on this. I would like to see our logo used for It Is Written. I'd like to see our logo used for Voice of Prophecy. I would like to see our logo for every official media in our country, in our division rather. And I have gone as far as said, if they don't use our logo, we shouldn't be using our money. And that wakes people up when I say that. But can you imagine if you had a logo on every church? And people will see it, they won't even necessarily connect it with the Adventist Church. It's just part of the branding. And if that same logo was beside It Is Written in the TV guide or the other magazines, or VOAR had that same logo, people would feel safe when they were watching that show. They wouldn't know why they feel safe, but they've seen the logo often enough that it's big enough that they feel comfortable in turning on that switch. Sometimes we can put programs on and you don't know where they're coming from. And people are afraid to get involved with some kind of cultish. But if you brand it, you could brand evil things. And if you had it enough places, often enough, people would feel safe. So let's use this for good. Here's where we are a disaster as a church. These are all Adventist logos. And there's only one or two tied in with the Adventist Church. And when there's a new mission made in our church, we'll often say, oh, we have to create a logo for it. We have a logo. We should be using that logo. The Salvation Army doesn't change their logo every time they open up a different thrift store or have a different ministry. Here's our logo. This came back in 1997. And it was our first official logo, although we had all kinds of logos before, but this is the first official worldwide logo. We changed the font, and the reason we did that is because we're working in a lot of languages, and we need to have the same look and feel, so we have a font that was supplied by Google that's in all the languages, which is free. Free is always a nice word when you're talking in a church. And here was the old logo. And we went to this font, which we've named Advent Sans. And this is what the new logo looks like. The font's a bit different. It's a sans serif font versus a serif font. And I'll just go on a little sidebar to tell the difference between a serif font and a sans serif font is all biblical. What were serifs in the Bible? They were angels, right? So I'm just going to go back to our old font, which was a serif font. And if you see down to the A, it had little legs on the bottom, and H has little legs on the bottom and top. What a serif font meant was angels, and these were to represent angel feet. And the first Bibles were only to use serif fonts because it was a messenger with angels. Angels meaning messenger. So, hold it. Am I going the wrong way here? So that's the little detour I made to talk about fonts, and I began pressing the wrong way. Okay, so that's our old font, this is our new font, and this is what it looks like. And if you go to identity.adventist.org, you can download that font in all these languages, and it's an official font. So if you have a Czech church, you can download a Czech font. If you have a Kiswahili church, you can download a Kiswahili font that's in the same look and style, which helps us with our international branding. There are a lot of them there. And the symbol has been like this. The old one is on the left, the slightly modified one is on the right. The cross is a bit bigger. The angle at the edge of the book, on the one on the right, is the same angle as the flames. And I'll show you, see how those lines line up now, and they are parallel. And they also made a little twist on the font. Those three flames on either side represent the three angels going around the world. We like to have it in isolation, not to have more than one font. Now, the color, okay, one thing we've added as well, and you'll see it on the Sabbath School Quarterly, is we are asking people to who are official statements like churches and whatnot, to use the creation cover. And it's every page is divided into 7, and the last one, which represents the Sabbath, is to actually stand alone. And see right here, the red thing on the right is 1/7 of the full page. The Sabbath School Quarterly also has this. It is 1/7. Quite a few magazines have it. We're having trouble doing a good design with the Canadian Adventist Messenger, just because it doesn't fit. We haven't found a way to make it look good yet. If you do billboards, 1/7 is to be the creation font or creation layout. See, this is one. These are all real examples, but he rested on the 7th day with the Adventist logo over on the bottom, over on the right-hand 7th. Different countries, different books. You'll see this more and more. When you see that, you can say, oh, that's an Adventist book. That's just part of our brand. Tithe envelopes can easily be able to be be changed to that. Our business cards now have this, and we have taken the stand in Canada that we want it to be all the same color, so it has that consistency. This is what the church's letterhead looks like now. Websites will have this, and Adventist. Oh yeah. In fact, if you want to ask a question before you forget it, my experience that I'll be in seminars and I'll have questions. By the end of the seminar, maybe it's my age or whatever, but I don't remember them. So yeah, go ahead, please.
2 slides back, you had a new member kit with the new logo.
Yeah, I don't know who's doing that. Some conferences have done that. We did that when we were out in British Columbia. This one right here. Theirs was different than this. I don't know of anybody who is doing this right now. I wish we did. Yeah, I talked about that briefly, and we had several different logos around the world that had 3 angels. Even in a conference, they would have somewhat differently. So then they voted to have one that was worldwide, and as I mentioned, that was actually made by a 3rd-generation Adventist who was born in a place called Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. You may have heard of that place. And his name is Brian Gray. His father was David Gay, if you remember. That's before the Gay clan turned their name over to Gray. Sorry. Here's the sample, be the sermon, right? But that's a good question, because the internet has gone wild with that. And the people that are spreading the rumors that it was done by a Jesuit haven't done research, and they're generally offshoots trying to discredit the Adventist Church. And I challenge them on that. I will say, which offshoot do you belong to? And they'll say, well, the General Conference is really an offshoot from us, So here's if you go to identity.adventist.org, you can download all the fonts. You can do it in several languages. And I'm glad we are doing this. I've been an Adventist long enough, and I've been an adult long enough that I don't like change anymore. And when this first came out, I couldn't figure out, why in the world would they change that? The old one was good enough. Everybody was using that. And, around the world, wherever I go, I saw the Adventist logo, and I knew that I was home. Then I found out why they were doing that. And I know you weren't here. We as a North American division and the church in Canada have voted to only have the denim blue color brand, just so that we're consistent. No other organization like Esso or Shell or Walmart or whoever else I said, they have the same logo everywhere in the world. They don't adapt it to, well, I don't think our local people will like this. No, they have one brand.
Circle of Hope Network, doing life and being church together.